You are 27 years old. Your hands are tied. The snow beneath your feet has been trampled into gray slush by boots that are not yours. You cannot feel your fingers, not because of fear, but because St. Petersburg, in December, does not care whether you are innocent, or guilty, or brilliant, or about to die. It is the 22nd of December, 1849, and you are standing in Semyonovsky Square, wearing a white execution shroud so thin it barely deserves to be called clothing at all. Around you, 21 other men wait in silence. Some are praying, some are trembling. Some have already disappeared somewhere inside themselves so completely that the square, the rifles, the crowd, all of it, has become unreachable. But you are awake, because directly in front of you, soldiers are loading rifles with mechanical precision. Powder, ramrod, steel. The sound is unbearable. Not loud, but precise. Like time itself has become audible. An officer steps forward. A sentence is read. For crimes against the state. For dangerous ideas. For reading forbidden words. Death. And then, something impossible happens. Your mind becomes clearer than it has ever been in your entire life. Not calmer, clearer. As though every wasted day, every postponed dream, every petty grievance, every meaningless anxiety that once occupied your thoughts has suddenly been burned away by one terrifying realization. You have 1 minute left, 60 seconds, no future, no next week, no when things finally settle down. Only 60 raw, unrepeatable seconds standing between you and oblivion. And in that moment, Fyodor Dostoevsky does something extraordinary. He does not panic. He does not beg. He does not collapse. He begins to calculate. 20 seconds, he decides, to say goodbye. Not out loud. There is no time for speeches. But with his eyes. With presence. With the kind of attention human beings almost never give each other until something is taken forever. He turns to the men beside him. Brothers now. Not by blood, but by fate. He sees their faces not as political dissidents, not as intellectuals, not as prisoners, but as living souls standing on the edge of extinction. And for the first time perhaps in his life, he truly sees them. 20 seconds. Then, 20 seconds for himself. Not his reputation, not his unfinished manuscripts, not the arguments he once believed mattered. Just himself. What had his life been? Had he lived honestly? Had he loved enough? Had he mistaken distraction for purpose? Had he spent his days preparing to live instead of living? And then, the final 20 seconds. For the world. For the sky above him. For the pale winter light stretching across the snow. For the gold glint of church domes in the distance. For existence itself. And standing there, with death approaching not as an abstraction, but as mathematics, Dostoevsky discovers something so psychologically shattering, so spiritually violent, that it will fracture his identity forever. Life becomes infinitely valuable the moment it is about to be lost. Not in theory, not philosophically, biologically. Every second transforms into treasure. Every breath becomes unbearable in its beauty. Every ordinary thing reveals itself as miraculous. The sky, the cold, the breath in his lungs, you, me, this. Then the swords are raised. The first prisoners are tied to posts. Dostoevsky is in the second group. He watches men in front of him prepare to die. This is no metaphor now. No symbolic brush with mortality. This is execution. And as the rifles lift, a messenger appears. Galloping. Urgent. A letter from Tsar Nicholas I. The execution is stopped. The sentence is commuted. Hard labor in Siberia. 4 years. No death. Not today. Imagine that. Imagine your nervous system crossing fully into death acceptance, only to be violently returned to life. Your funeral interrupted after your soul has already begun letting go. This was not mercy. It was psychological annihilation, a staged execution designed to break the mind. And for many men, it did. But not Dostoevsky. For him, something else happened. He was resurrected. Not physically, psychologically. The man who walked into that square believed life was something ahead of him. The man who walked out knew life was only ever now. This is the resurrection paradox. Why do human beings wait until life is threatened to understand its value? Why does mortality create clarity that ordinary living cannot? Why do we need the rifle, the diagnosis, the breakup, the collapse, before we finally see? Psychologists call this terror management. The confrontation with death reorganizes consciousness. The trivial falls away. The essential remains. But Dostoevsky's revelation went deeper than survival instinct. He realized death had exposed a lie he had been living inside, the illusion of endless time. You are living inside that illusion right now. We all are. We speak of next year as though it has signed a contract with us. We postpone joy, delay honesty, outsource presence. We tell ourselves life will begin after the promotion, after healing, after certainty, after someday. But someday is the most dangerous psychological weapon ever invented, because someday convinces you there is more time than there is. Dostoevsky lost someday in a single morning, and because of that, he gained reality. He later wrote, "Life is a gift. Life is happiness. Every minute can be an eternity of happiness." Every minute. Not the perfect minute. Not the successful minute. This one. The ordinary one. The one you are spending right now. In Siberia, Dostoevsky was stripped of everything. Freedom. Comfort. Status. Books. Privacy. He slept in filth, worked in chains, lived among murderers. And yet, he would later describe this period not simply as suffering, but awakening. Because once a man has already faced death, what can discomfort really threaten? Once you have stood before rifles, embarrassment loses power. Status loses power. Fear itself begins to change shape. This is why his later novels feel different. Crime and punishment is not merely about guilt. The Idiot is not merely about innocence. The Brothers Karamazov is not merely about faith. They are all haunted by one question. What does a human being become after looking directly at death and continuing to live? Dostoevsky's answer: more alive than before, but only if they remember. And this is where most of us fail, because we do have moments of resurrection. A near accident, a funeral, a heartbreak, a hospital room, a phone call at 2:13 a.m. Moments when illusion cracks. Moments when we suddenly see life with unbearable sharpness. But then, we forget. The nervous system resets. Routine returns. Emails, deadlines, scrolling. And slowly, we go back to sleep. Dostoevsky did not forget. That is why he matters. He carried the firing squad with him for the rest of his life. Not as trauma alone, as revelation. He understood that to be conscious of death was not morbidity. It was liberation. Because death awareness destroys false priorities. Ask yourself, if you had 60 seconds left, would you care what strangers thought of you? Would you care about unanswered emails? Would you care about minor humiliations from 3 years ago? Would you care about the version of yourself you performed to seem acceptable? Or would everything collapse instantly into one blinding truth? I was alive. And I didn't notice enough. This is the paradox. Death does not merely end life. The awareness of death can begin it. 32 years after that morning, Dostoevsky died for real. No mockery, no last-minute pardon, no horseman. And by then, He had written masterpieces that would outlive empires. But his greatest work may not have been his novels. It may have been the transformation itself. To take the worst moment imaginable and turn it into sight. To be psychologically executed and resurrected with a deeper vision. That is rare. Most people experience mortality as fear. Dostoevsky experienced it as an initiation. He became a witness to something most people spend their lives avoiding. The fact that existence is happening now and nowhere else. Not in your plans, not in your memories, not in the identity you are constructing for strangers. Now, here, this breath, this conversation, this fragile passing second. So here is the real question. Not what Dostoevsky saw. What are you refusing to see because you keep assuming you have more time? What conversation are you delaying? What truth are you muting? What beauty are you walking past because your mind is trapped somewhere else? You do not need a firing squad to understand life. But you may need to remember, with terrifying honesty, that one is coming. For all of us. And this is not pessimism. This is the doorway. Because when you stop treating time like something guaranteed, you stop living like a spectator. You begin, really begin. Dostoevsky stood before death and discovered life. Not later. Not after success. Not when conditions improved, in the final seconds. Which means the doorway was never death. The doorway was awareness. And that means the same doorway is available to you right now. One day, someone will tell you there are 60 seconds left. Maybe literally. Maybe not. But the clock is already running. So the question is not whether mortality will wake you. It will. The question is whether you must wait until the rifles are raised to finally open your eyes.